In this video, I'm going to look at the costumes from House of the Dragon Episode 3, titled Second of His Name. But before I proceed, there will be spoilers for HBO's House of the Dragon. In this episode, we have time jumped 3 years into the future. Alicent is now queen, having married King Viserys and given him a son named Aegon, who just turned 2. One of the first things that I noticed in this episode, and I'm sure you did too, was all of the color. House of the Dragon costume designer Jany Temime said in an interview with Tatler Asia, the main point the showrunners made was that we should design costumes with color of each side of the family in mind, red, black and gold, and green and blue. Now this was first established in Game of Thrones with the Lannisters in red and gold and the Tyrells in green and blue. I had compared it to a sort of Capulets and Montagues from Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. So here, while Alicent appears in Hightower house colors in the pilot, and then into the blues in the second episode, she's moving into Targaryen colors here, although it's a bit more rosy. She's a beautiful queen, and I love this costume. I have mentioned in other videos that a lot of the fabrics for the show are sourced from London, and this particular Indian brocade facing on her collar and trim are from Top Fabric of Soho. It's very subtle, but it also appears that Alicent's hair color is moving more to the red from auburn. You might notice that there are gold dragon talon brooches on Alicent's sleeves. Funny because these are very similar to young Rhaenyra's riding costume as well, and we will see them on older Rhaenyra. Same for the dragon clasps. I'm just imagining the wardrobe team with a massive box of findings that they're using on multiple costumes. For the rest of the Targaryen party going on the hunt, I like that they went more earthy and away from the Targaryen black. Both Viserys and Rhaenyra are wearing chocolate brown leather with cutwork on the trim, revealing the dark rose detail underneath. This is repeated in Viserys' cloak, which has a similar trimming, and I noticed that his cloak is lined with the same fabric as Rhaenyra's fealty costume, but in red. This fabric was custom woven for the show by Top Fabric of Soho. Viserys' belt also has this square cutwork detail and metal rivets. Temime said in the same interview, having such a strong color story refined the design so much, they affected the silhouettes. Simple and graphic shapes helped to accentuate the colors further and forced us to consider how these colors would appear on screen. Viserys has a quilted and embossed version of the Targaryen sigil appliqued onto his tunic. This is a nice change from the embroidered patches that he usually wears. And he wears embroidered leather gloves, hiding the fact that 2 of his fingers have been amputated since we last saw him in episode 2. When I first saw his costume, I couldn't help but think of Robert Baratheon's costume from his fatal hunt in season 1 of Game of Thrones, also dressed in brown leather and red brocade. The details have been extraordinary on the show. If you look closely at Rhaenyra's costume, for instance, you can see that there is embroidery and beading on her dress that carry down from the center front to the hem. I can't imagine how many man-hours this would require. The Lannister colors are less intense here as well, not like the vivid shades we would see on Cersei Lannister. We're on more neutral ground. And I also like Otto Hightower's costume. This is a sort of studded gambeson that he's wearing with the embroidered Hightower sigil on the breast. It's still a bit fancy and accessorized with his chain and Hand of the King brooch. I thought that his armor in the previous episode is one of the best sets of armor that I've seen in the show so far leading up to the War for the Stepstones. Temime said, I loved making the armor. There's something about working with metal and creating these shapes. You can't cut corners with armor because it's all about proportion and volume and movement. Speaking of armor, I have to touch on the Valarian armor worn by Corlys, his brother Vaemond, and his son Laenor. Now for me, this is the best armor so far, most notably Corlys. I think Corlys' armor is beautiful with all of the detailing in gold and fish scale mail under his plate armor. His helm looks like the shape of a scallop shell, which ties into his pommel and belt buckle. Now, I haven't dug into the armors in the show so much, but this appears to be inspired by the 15th or 16th century plate armors of the time. And Daemon's armor for this battle is the same as his gold cloak armor. Temime told Metro, "It is a torture, but I had a brilliant armor team and they know their job." Now, I have a few quibbles, and you're welcome to leave if you don't want to hear them. I'm still not entirely happy with the fit of the costumes in this series so far, when there is so much attention to detail with the cuts, trim, accessories, and jewelry. They were better in this episode than in the first two, in my humble opinion, but here's an example of two footmen. The costume worn by the guy on the left is far too small. Also in this episode, and being the queen, I think it would be appropriate for Alicent to have another costume on the day after the hunt. Others have mentioned that she wore that one seersucker silk blue dress for 3 days straight in the second episode. And while we're at it, I thought it was an odd choice to have Princess Rhaenyra wearing the same riding coat that she wore in episodes 1 and 2, considering it is 3 years later. I think it could have been solved if she had worn the brown leather cutwork outfit from the start of the episode. And same goes with her wearing her gold silk dress again from episode 2. But other than that, I was pretty happy overall. Now, as a reminder, I'm hosting live streams on the channel every Tuesday at 7 p.m. with our reaction to the latest episode. I hope you can join us. And if you're new to the channel and are enjoying this content, consider subscribing. Thank you for spending time with me. I'll see you in the next episode.